Hi, sweeties. How are you doing? Welcome to Cimnanya, and thank you all so much for all the love and support. Hope you all are doing great. So today we'll be talking something very important, and it's about weaponization of palm-colored girl innocent. And I think this is not something new to a lot of people because if you know how they operate, it's always the palm-colored women who always weaponize. They'll use their privilege against our men. And I have seen it in different forms because I actually brought a lot of it here and the rest of it. Number one is that some black men still do not hear because the people that they are always able to hold down so much are black men. They hold them so much, and when they hold them down, in the end, they start screaming, But then black women see all this thing ahead of time. Now, I remember there are some videos I brought here some time ago about a black man who actually came out to say the palm-colored wife actually took him to call the cops on him and lied against him. And this is not far-fetched for what has happened during history and all that. I mean, the way they euthanize their innocence and cry against black men is just something that I'm still trying to wrap my head around. And once they say it, any other thing you are saying does not count. Once they start crying, once they fake that tears, when they start throwing tantrum, whatever you have to say does not matter. That's why I keep telling a lot of men to really be very careful. You know what? Let's get into this video.
In creating Rose Armitage, Jordan Peele in his film Get Out is not only making a great fake out that scares the living daylights out of us, but he's critiquing the bargain American patriarchy often tries to make with white women. Jordan Peele already knows that the American cultural memory of white womanhood is innocence. He also knows that the patriarchy has an obsession with that innocence because it is a way to control women. And that control looks like movement, right? They idealize and create this version of a woman that's nice, that's thin, that's helpful, that's always willing to serve. Specifically to serve the ends of the defined group of human beings, not just human givers. Jordan Peele also knows as an audience, we're going in with those cultural, social memories and biases in our own heads. So when we see Rose, we see all those ideal traits in a woman. She's thin, she's pretty, she's helpful. We see her carefully selecting pastries to bring to Chris. She asks him, do you have your toothbrush? Did you pack this? Did you pack that? She comforts him. We see her in the first scene where she's interacting with him, acting maternal towards the dog, and soothing his fears about visiting her family. We accurately read her and clock her as helpful. So then we inaccurately read her as good. Because what we are unaware of in that moment and in that part of the film is that she's doing all this on purpose towards a violent and selfish end. By playing her part in the Order of the Coagula, she reaffirms her identity, her sense of safety. She gets resources and money from it, and she's just a good member of that society. Very clever of Jordan. But as we talk about time and time again, there's always a trap when an oppressive power structure offers you a chance to be complicit in what it's doing. You aren't actually able to build a society that can protect you against anti-democratic threats. You aren't in a community that actually values human life. You aren't actually protecting yourself long term. And there's a whole history in the South of poor white or immigrant people who are in rural contexts finding out that the same slave patrols that they didn't say anything about and they kind of looked the other way, that those groups had no problem turning against them and using similar violence on their bodies and their families and their things when it was more convenient for the ruling class. Remember that whole mystery about that white woman who was found unalived in her house, and it came out later that they believed her law enforcement husband did it, but the agency kind of covered it up because that sort of thing is kind of part of the culture for a lot of these agencies, and nobody wanted to rat the guy out. If you have the stomach for it, look up the Amanda Pe0ple case, because that is a tragic example, but an example nonetheless of how that bargain, when you become difficult, when you become quote unquote unreasonable or someone not worth protecting anymore, people who literally have sworn their life to upholding the peace and law and all of that have no problem just taking your life. CBS did a show on it called 48 Hours. I've not seen the whole thing, so I can't vouch for if it's repetitive or not, but look into that story. Another thing you may have noticed on social media that is rising in the algorithm are white Christian young couples pushing this idea of every single person no exceptions really, should not be on birth control, and that this is the good and holy thing to do, right? Even though we all know that's a decision often between you, God, your family. This idea is often made without the context of, look, you're living in a country that has one of the worst maternal rates in the world for people of color or just women in general. Political contingencies of these same demographics have voted against making sure that there's healthcare or access to a safety net in case something terrible does happen in the hospital. And since 2023, that maternal healthcare risk, that rate, has not gone down, it's gone up. The policies and access to the representation and taxation that could change that could have more equitable taxation laws, that could have better, a better chance at getting health care for yourself and your family, or fair wages, those are consistently shot down by political groups who are working to disenfranchise voters based on where they live, who they are, their incarceration status, etc. We've discussed this before. This is not new information. It's not new information because it's an old thing to realize. In any government situation, in any society, there are people who will work against their own best interests, including my dog while I'm trying to record this, to make sure that they have a sense of superiority, or that they're right, or that they're accepted as good from people that they care about. So what's shocking in the movie is to realize Rose is not just along for the ride. She's not a witness to a terrible crime. She is a female accomplice. And Jordan Peele is not pulling this out of American thin historical air. There were many American plantations that could not have successfully pulled off harvesting medical experiments for Black people, harvesting labor, trading people back and forth, breeding people without the collusion of Southern white ladies. Because this bears repeating, these were women who were socially deemed to be white. Their whiteness is not inherent, and I'm not criticizing the fact that they do not have a lot of melanin. I'm criticizing the power that the social story about that lack of melanin has. So you can save yourself the comment. We are just articulating the power that came from a certain kind of violence and control given to a certain group of people in our society. Now, a book that has won many rewards and seems to be very well respected, and that I'm currently just started reading this week, is called They Were Her Property by Professor Stephanie E. Jones-Rogers. She's an assistant professor at UC Berkeley, an active historian, and tends to focus her work on gender and American slavery. And she starts this book off with a bang. We're taken back to 1859. James Redpath is the editor of the New York Tribune. He has gone down to antebellum South to scope out the situation and bring back the story to his readers. His report is that, look guys, the only reason these lovely sweet women did not rise up in protest against what was happening in the South is because their feeble, fragile minds were protected from the dirty truth of enslavement. He is articulating that patriarchy withheld from them the sheer amount of violence that was required to maintain the lifestyles they were living. He defends these ladies. Like, look, they didn't see the whippings. They didn't see the auction houses. They didn't see the pain and the assaults and all of that. So they didn't do anything because of that. They just didn't. If they knew better, they would have done better. And there, can you catch it? The lie that patriarchy keeps women innocent. And what James Redpath gets to do here is comfort himself and comfort others, in that these women that look like him, look like women he knows, they're not capable of this evil. They're not capable of this collusion. And if they're ignorant and innocent, they can't be weaponized. What power do they have? And best of all, innocent women can't be held accountable for racism and enslavement. But what Professor Jones-Rogers is asking us to remember is that even as patriarchy tells women that, no, you shouldn't have power, you shouldn't have influence in society, it will give them just enough. It will give them some if they're complicit in achieving and shoring up its ends. But it has to obscure and hide that power because it still has to sell this lie that women thrive best in a male-dominated society. But of course, we all know that's not true. We see that women are whole people who have agency and the ability to have power and do things. But as Dr. Beverly Tatum says, the idea of social innocence is something we want to keep, we want to hold on to, because nobody wants to think. It's not comfortable to believe that you can reap from a default system that oppresses another person. That's painful and hard to swallow. And what makes it comforting is to then say, okay, the act of reaping from, social oppression or racism or sexism or classism, we'll just put that on active, obvious villains, people who are doing the most to be villainous and greedy and selfish. To reap from oppression, you have to be a willing bad actor, not just somebody who is simply benefiting from a culture that happens to tilt towards your favor or give you some advantages here and there. And that's how Rose hid in plain sight. Now, Rose was, as James Radpath also goes on to say in his editorial, look, these women were groomed. They were perverted by this society. But in doing so, he also plays into this patriarchal idea that women don't have agency, that they do not have the empathetic human ability to look at someone's pain and suffering and think about that. Rose and other women who uphold harmful behaviors are not feeble babies who cannot think about what their priorities are. And they still are full human beings capable of being held accountable. When you see videos of women using their social power, their believability, their credibility, the fact that people look at them and feel sorry for them because they look a certain way, and you see them weaponize that and calling forces, screaming, crying, no one's touching them, no one's doing anything to them, nobody has hurt them, and they are throwing a full tantrum and fit, and they believe that they will be protected from it. That is not somebody who's just been indoctrinated. That's someone who is given a social script and is banking on it and calling it into order. But for this to be useful long after the movie's ended, I would suggest that you look at some of the resources I shared in my podcast, The Process with Alex Pe0ple. We did 2 episodes that kind of talk about articulating this kind of political power. Also, shout out to everyone for their thoughts and comments. I'm loving reading them. Thank you.
So this is all I got from this, and it's really obvious that they know how to throw tantrum like someone. That is something they know how to do very best, and I don't know if it's something they learn and all that, because they throw that tantrum because they know that they are going to be protected, probably because of their skin color, or probably because of just who they are and all that, being different from every other person and the rest of it. This is something that we've known them for, and a lot of Black people already know that this is what they do very well, and I see a lot of, especially Black men, some trying to avoid them so bad, because if you are not smart enough, they use that against you. And you all can remember a lot of things that has happened during history and all that, like back then and the rest of it, how most of them, I think they just have a different way of operating. And once they say that is just the last as the truth and all that, I mean, once they start crying and start screaming, throwing tantrum and all that, you are the wrong person. Anything you have to say at that point in time does not matter. They are the ones telling the truth. Because if you look at the history, how some certain things happened, it was because they said, not because you were caught or not because they saw you doing it and all that. And some of them that this happened to never, ever saw the light of the day again. That was the end of them and the rest of it. So I think this is something that we know how to do best, because they do know the power they hold and the rest of it. And what do? That's why if you look at all this bear and something that has been going on, pop-colored women, because one thing I love about Black women is that they already know how they operate. I mean, they have mastered them so good that, I mean, even before they do something like what they plan doing in the next 2 days or 3 days or 5, Black women already saw ahead of that. And they can tell you, you see this, do not let it happen, because it's going to put you in trouble. That's why I think some people really do not listen to Black women, not just only, even others, some people from African countries and all that. I know what I am saying. There are some videos they see and they react to it, and they are like, you people are not tightening your space and all that. And I see some, probably some Africans say it's probably some material, clothing and all that. Or maybe African babes, you see them wearing them in full attire, or probably come to Africa doing some dance and all that. And Black women will tell them, this is not right. And you see them saying, why do you people keep saying it is not right? Why is it you all keep tightening? I know why they do that, because they have had their experience firsthand, and they know them so well that they know what they are up to, because they have experienced them. But I think the ignorant, each time I look at them, I'm like, if only you understand. So ignorant, or should I say innocent, not ignorant, innocent them. We be wanting to defend the other people without understanding. So all I am going to say is that Black women see ahead, and whatever moves they want to do, they know already. So they actually know how to tackle them. That's why when this bear and all that came out, and Black people said, we are talking about bears, but you people are like, another bear, especially when it comes to a place of work. And Black women would not want to work with colored women because you all are full of trouble. We would rather work with colored men because they give us more peace than you all do. And they started crying hell. Why would they say that? Why would Black women choose the men over the women? Is that okay? It's actually okay because they've studied you all and they know how you are, here. So I do not blame anybody saying that they do not want to, because you all know how to pronounce some certain things against people, especially Black women. That's all I have to say. Let me know what you all think in the comment section. I'll see you all in my next video. Bye for now.